Good morning. Paul here, and I'm down with my friend John Ritchie, who's throwing a pot onto a pottery wheel. And today we're going to be talking about Jeremiah, who was a major prophet. He was born in about 655 BC and he died in Egypt in 570 BC. And the reason they are called a major prophet is because the books were larger than the minor prophets. As simple as that. All the major prophets had large books. There's 52 chapters in Jeremiah, and the minor prophets only wrote short books. But Jeremiah was the right man in the right place at the right time. So he was called, before he was born, to be a prophet to the nations. In Jeremiah 1 verse 5 he says, "Before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart and appointed you as a prophet to the nations." He was forbidden to marry. So he was a single man all his life, but he was known as the weeping prophet. And he also wrote the book of Lamentations in the Bible. So he was a bit of a wet blanket. Often people will say, "Oh, you're a Jeremiah," but what they mean is that you're a bit of a wet blanket. But he was born at a time when King Manasseh was in charge, and he was the king who had the prophet Isaiah stuffed into a hollow log and sawn in two. So prophets were not highly regarded in Israel at this time. And he was the last prophet to speak to the two tribes, Judah and Benjamin, that the other 10 tribes had separated off from the kingdom, and they'd gone their own way in the north. But he spoke to the two tribes about the doom and the problems that were coming. Now, some of the very common verses from Jeremiah are these. Jeremiah 29 verse 11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future." Jeremiah 17:9 says this, "The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it?" How about this one? Jeremiah 33:3. "Call to me and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things that you know nothing of." Here's another one, Jeremiah 23:5. "The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will raise up for David a righteous branch, a king who will reign wisely and do what is just and right in the land." Jeremiah 29:13. "You will seek me. You will find me, and when you seek me with all your heart." Jeremiah 1:19, "They will fight against you, but will not overcome you, for I am with you, and I will rescue you, declares the Lord." They're just very popular verses out of the book of Jeremiah. But in Jeremiah chapter 18, here's where we come to the potter's house. This is from verse 1. "This is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord. Go down to the potter's house, and there I will give you my message." So I went down to the potter's house, and I saw him working at the wheel. But the pot he was shaping from the clay was marred in his hands, so the potter formed it into another pot, shaping it as seemed best to him. Then the word of the Lord came to me. He said, "Can I not do with you, Israel, as this potter does, declares the Lord. Like clay in the hand of the potter, so are you in my hand, Israel. If at any time I announce that a nation or a kingdom is to be uprooted, torn down and destroyed, and if that nation I warned repents of its evil, then I will relent and not inflict on it the disaster that I had planned. And if at another time I announce that a nation or a kingdom is to be built up and planted, and if it does evil in my sight and does not obey me, then I will reconsider the good I had intended to do for it." Now therefore say this to the people of Judah and those living in Jerusalem. This is what the Lord says. Look, I am preparing a disaster for you and devising a plan against you. So turn from your evil ways, each one of you, and reform your ways and your actions. But they will reply, it's no use. We will continue with our own plans. We will all follow the stubbornness of our evil hearts. Needless to say, they would not change. They hardened their hearts and continued to live in rebellion. Then in chapter 19, God says through Jeremiah, he says this, I will devastate this city and make it an object of horror and scorn. All who pass by will be appalled and will scoff because of all its wounds. I will make them eat the flesh of their sons and daughters, and they will eat one another's flesh, because their enemies will press the siege so hard against them to destroy them. Then break the jar. He'd asked Jeremiah to take this crude jar that had been fired in the clay and break the jar while those who go with you are watching. And I say to them, this is what the Lord Almighty says, I will smash this nation and this city just as this potter's jar is smashed and cannot be repaired. They will bury the dead in Topheth until there is no more room. Just terrible, terrible words of doom and gloom. So in conclusion, Jeremiah saw the apostasy, the idolatry, the broken marriages, the false prophets, the sexual immorality. But beyond all that, he also saw hope. In chapter 31, he said, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah. This is the covenant I will make with the people of Israel. After that time, declares the Lord, I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God and they will be my people. Now this is fulfilled when Jesus said in 1 Corinthians 11:25, he says, in the same way, after supper, he took the cup, saying, this is the cup of the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it in remembrance of me. So there's the new covenant coming that Jeremiah foretold. Jeremiah placed an emphasis on spiritual living. He tells us our hearts need to be in our worship. He tells us that we are all responsible for our own sins. He warns the people that one day they will lose the temple. So just come together, he says, for praise, for prayer and reading the word. We don't need a high priest because we have Jesus. Here was a man driven to preach. The word became like a hidden fire burning in his bones if he did not get it out. It's a great read, the book of Jeremiah. It's long, it's a major prophet, but I recommend you spend some time there and read it all, because you're going to learn a lot about the nature of God as you read Jeremiah. Or you might like to get some more teaching on it. Listen to David Pawson on YouTube as he teaches on Jeremiah. Just click on the button on your screen and it'll take you to David's teachings. They're very, very good, very comprehensive. And the next book that we're going to study is the book of Lamentations. So again, click on the button on your screen if you want to come with us to study the book of Lamentations, which is Jeremiah lamenting over the condition of Israel. So there we are, from the Potter's House with John, my friend. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you again another day.
I'll take this off since the lady said it's all right.
Look at that. Piece of wire and cut it off.
One plays with it afterwards, of course.